A waitress never expected to serve one of the richest men in the world, Jeff Bezos. But when she picks up the check, something strange catches her eye. What happens next is nothing short of unbelievable. Was it a mistake, a hidden message, or something else entirely? Watch till the end to find out. The rain poured outside as Maria wiped the last table at Riverside Diner, her small-town restaurant. At 67 years old, she was tired. Her feet ached, her hands were rough, and her heart carried a pain no one saw. She had lost her husband 2 years ago. He had been her rock, her reason to smile. Now, she worked double shifts to survive. That night, as she looked up, the door opened. A man stepped in, dressed in a simple jacket and jeans. But something about him felt different. He had a presence, a silent confidence. Maria squinted. Her heart nearly stopped. It was Jeff Bezos, the billionaire, the man who had everything. Maria's hands shook as she grabbed the menu. Why would he be here, in this tiny diner? Table for one? She asked, trying to sound normal. Jeff smiled. Yes, please. Something simple. As Maria served him, she noticed how quiet he was. No bodyguards, no cameras, just a man eating alone. She had no idea this night would change her life forever. Jeff finished his meal and smiled warmly. Delicious. Thank you. Maria nodded, still in disbelief. As he placed the check on the table, he looked at her with kind eyes. You work hard. People like you are the heart of this country. Her throat tightened. No one had said something so kind in a long time. He left cash on the table and walked out into the rain. Maria hesitated before picking up the check. She gasped. $10,000. Her hands shook. This can't be real. She looked at the cash again. The bills were crisp, new, too new. Something felt off. She flipped the check over and saw a small handwritten note. Find the truth. It will set you free. Maria's heart pounded. What truth? She ran to the door, but Jeff was gone. She had no idea that this was only the beginning. Maria sat at her kitchen table, staring at the money. It felt wrong. Was it real, or was it some kind of joke? Her fingers trembled as she searched online. The serial numbers on the bills were untraceable. No records, no bank information. Panic rose in her chest. Then she looked at the check again. The handwriting seemed familiar. Her heart stopped. It looked just like her late husband's. Tears filled her eyes. This isn't possible. Tom is gone. She clutched the note. Find the truth. It will set you free. What truth? She had spent years grieving, believing Tom had died from a heart attack. But suddenly, a terrifying thought crossed her mind. What if that wasn't the truth at all? Her hands went cold. What had Jeff Bezos just led her to? Maria knew one thing. She had to find out. And she was not ready for what she was about to uncover. Maria sat at her kitchen table, staring at the note Jeff Bezos had left behind. Find the truth, it will set you free. She wiped her tears and picked up the check again. Her eyes scanned the paper, desperate for answers. Then, something caught her attention. A name was lightly written at the bottom. A name she hadn't seen in years. Thomas Reynolds. Her husband's full name. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Her hands shook as she traced the letters. It was impossible. Her husband had been dead for 7 years. Her vision blurred with tears. Was this some kind of cruel joke? Why would Jeff Bezos leave her a check with Tom's name on it? Suddenly, she remembered something. Tom used to work at a finance firm before he died. He handled accounts for wealthy people like Jeff Bezos. Maria's heart pounded. Did Jeff know something about Tom's death? Her hands clenched into fists. She had lived with grief for too long. If there was even the slightest chance that something wasn't right, she had to find out. She had no idea the storm she was about to walk into. Maria barely slept that night. The name on the check haunted her. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She had to find Jeff Bezos. But how? She picked up her phone, her fingers shaking. She searched for his foundation, his companies, anything that had a number. Finally, she found one. An old business contact for his private security team. Her heart pounded as she dialed. After a few rings, a deep voice answered. "Who is this?" Maria swallowed hard. My name is Maria Reynolds. I think Jeff Bezos left something for me. I need to speak to him." Silence. Then the voice spoke again, colder this time. "How did you get this number?" Maria's hands trembled. "Please, I think he's trying to tell me something about my husband." The man on the phone sighed. "Mrs. Reynolds, you shouldn't have called." Then, the line went dead. Maria's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And now, she wasn't just searching for the truth. She was in danger. Maria sat frozen, staring at the silent phone in her hand. Why had the man hung up? What was he hiding? She was about to redial when she heard it. A knock at her door. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Slowly, she stood up and peeked through the curtain. A tall man in a black suit stood outside. His face was unreadable, but his presence sent a shiver down her spine. He knocked again, firmer this time. Maria's hands felt clammy. She wasn't expecting anyone. Then, the man spoke. "Mrs. Reynolds, please open the door. I work for Mr. Bezos. He sent me." Maria's breath hitched. Jeff sent him? But why? Her fingers hovered over the lock. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but a small voice in her heart whispered, "If you don't open this door, you may never know the truth." With a shaky breath, Maria reached for the handle and turned it. She had just stepped into something far bigger than she could ever imagine. Maria's hand trembled as she opened the door. The man in the black suit stepped inside without hesitation. His face was unreadable, his presence heavy. He closed the door behind him. Maria swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "I work for Mr. Bezos," the man said in a deep, calm voice. "He asked me to protect you." "Protect me?" Maria's stomach clenched. "From what?" The man's sharp eyes scanned the room, as if checking for threats. Then he leaned in slightly. "Mrs. Reynolds, your husband's death. It wasn't an accident." Maria's breath caught in her throat. Her knees went weak. She gripped the back of a chair to stay upright. "You're lying," she whispered. The man pulled out a small flash drive and placed it on the table. "Watch this. Then, you'll understand." Maria's hands shook as she reached for it. The man stepped back toward the door. "They're watching you now. Be careful." Before she could ask anything else, he was gone. Maria locked the door, her heart racing. She stared at the flash drive, terrified of what she was about to see, but she knew she had to watch it. Maria plugged the flash drive into her old laptop, her hands trembling. The screen flickered. A video popped up. The footage was grainy, taken from a security camera. The date in the corner made Maria's breath hitch. The night her husband died. She watched as Tom sat in a dimly lit office. He was typing something on his computer. His face looked tense, worried. Then the door behind him opened. A tall man in a black coat entered. Maria couldn't see his face, but something about him felt wrong. Tom turned around, startled. He stood up quickly, shaking his head. Maria could barely make out his words. "Please, I won't say anything. Just leave my family alone." The man lunged. Maria let out a choked sob as she watched her husband struggle. The fight lasted only a few seconds. The man pressed something against Tom's neck, a needle. Tom collapsed. His body went still. Maria clapped a hand over her mouth. tears streaming down her face. Her husband hadn't died of a heart attack. He had been murdered. And the worst part? Maria recognized the man in the black coat. Her world shattered. Maria felt like she couldn't breathe. She played the video again, her fingers digging into the table. The man in the black coat. She knew him. She grabbed a tissue, wiping her tears. Her heart pounded as she searched for the face in her memory. Then it hit her. It was her husband's best friend, Michael Carter, a man who had been at her house after the funeral, comforting her. A man who had held her hand, telling her it was God's plan. A liar. A murderer. Maria's entire body shook. She felt sick. Why would he do this? What did Tom know that got him killed? Maria didn't realize she was sobbing until she heard her own voice break in the empty room. Her life had been a lie. Her phone buzzed. She flinched, staring at the screen. A blocked number. Her fingers hovered over the answer button. Was it Michael? Was it someone else? Maria wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and answered. Maria's fingers shook as she answered the call. "Hello?" she whispered. A deep voice responded. "Maria, listen carefully. You're in danger." Her breath caught. "Who is this?" "I don't have time to explain," the man said quickly. "They know you have the footage. You need to leave. Now." Maria's pulse raced. "Who are they?" A pause. Then, "The people who killed your husband." Tears burned Maria's eyes. "Why?" Another silence. Then the man spoke, softer this time. "Tom found out something he wasn't supposed to know. Something about money. Stolen money. He was trying to protect you." Maria's knees went weak. Her husband had died protecting her. She swallowed hard. "Why would Jeff Bezos send me the footage?" The man hesitated. "Because he was part of it. But now he wants to make it right." Maria's chest tightened. Was Jeff Bezos trying to help her, or was she walking into something worse? The man on the phone took a deep breath. "Maria, they're coming for you. You need to run." Suddenly, her power cut out. Maria's house went dark. Maria's hands shook as she grabbed a flashlight. She couldn't breathe. Someone had cut the power. Her mind screamed one thing: run. She grabbed the flash drive, shoved it in her pocket, and grabbed her coat. Her heart pounded as she peeked through the curtains. A black SUV sat parked across the street. Maria's stomach twisted. They were here. She slipped out the back door, her breath quick and shaky. The night air was cold against her skin. She ran through her backyard, past the trees, toward the only person she could trust. Her neighbor, Doris. Doris was 72, a kind widow who had lived next door for years. She would help. Maria banged on the door. "Doris, please open up." A light flicked on inside. Seconds later, the door cracked open. Doris gasped. "Maria? What's wrong?" Maria stepped inside, locking the door behind her. "They killed Tom," she whispered, breaking down. "And now, they're coming for me." Doris's face paled. A shadow passed by the window. Maria's blood went cold. They had found her. Maria and Doris sat in the dark, listening. Footsteps. Right outside the house. Maria clutched Doris's hand. The older woman squeezed back, her eyes filled with fear. Then, a knock. Maria's entire body tensed. Doris whispered, "Don't answer it." But then, a voice. Deep, calm, familiar. "Maria, it's me." Maria's heart stopped. Jeff Bezos. She stood frozen. Why was he here? Doris shook her head. "Don't open it." But Maria's gut told her this was her only chance to get the truth. She walked to the door. With shaking hands, she opened it. Jeff Bezos stood there, his face unreadable. But his eyes, They looked sad. "I need to tell you everything," he said. Maria swallowed hard. "Then start talking," she whispered. Because if Jeff Bezos was here in person, then things were even worse than she thought. Maria's fingers gripped the doorframe as she stared at Jeff Bezos standing in front of her. She should have been terrified, but his eyes, they weren't cold. They held regret, sadness. Maria's voice shook. "Why are you here?" Jeff sighed. "Because you deserve the truth." Dora stood behind Maria, whispering, "Don't trust him." Jeff's jaw tightened. "Maria, I made mistakes. I was part of something I thought was just business. But your husband, he tried to stop it." Maria's heart pounded. Stop what?" Jeff took a deep breath. "A secret fund, billions of dollars, stolen from people who trusted us. Tom found out. He tried to warn someone, but they silenced him." Maria's chest tightened. "Who silenced him?" Jeff's face darkened. "Powerful men. Men even I can't control." Tears blurred Maria's vision. "My husband died trying to do the right thing." Jeff nodded. "Yes, and they won't stop until this is buried forever." Maria's hands clenched into fists. They stole her husband's life. Now she had to make them pay. Jeff slid a small envelope into Maria's hand. "This is everything," he whispered. Maria opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a USB drive. "What's on this?" she asked, her throat dry. "Every name, every stolen dollar, and—" Jeff hesitated. "The man who ordered your husband's death." Maria's breath caught. This was it, the proof. Jeff looked away, ashamed. "I should have done something sooner." Maria swallowed hard. "Why now? Why are you helping me?" Jeff exhaled deeply. "Because I see what I became. I have everything, but I lost my soul along the way. Tom was a good man. If I can fix even a small part of what happened to him, I have to." Tears ran down Maria's cheeks. She had spent years grieving, thinking Tom's death was just fate. But it wasn't. It was murder. And now she held the key to destroying the people who took him from her. Jeff met her eyes. "But if you do this, you have to be ready for war." Maria took a deep breath. She had nothing left to lose. "I'm ready." Maria held the USB drive in her hands. It was small, but inside, it carried the truth. A truth that could bring down some of the most powerful men in the world. Doris touched her arm. "Are you sure about this?" Maria's eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "They killed Tom. I won't let them win." Jeff reached into his coat pocket and handed Maria a burner phone. "There's only one person who can help you now. Call this number. Say nothing except, 'I have the proof.'" Maria took the phone. "Who is it?" Jeff's expression darkened. "Someone more powerful than them." Maria dialed. The phone rang once, twice. Then, a voice answered. Deep, commanding, familiar. Maria's heart nearly stopped. It was Elon Musk. A long silence. Then his voice came through the line. "Maria, I've been waiting for this call." Her knees nearly buckled. This wasn't just a fight for justice anymore. It was bigger than she had ever imagined. Maria's fingers trembled as she gripped the phone. "Elon Musk?" she whispered. His voice was steady. "You have the proof?" Maria swallowed hard. "Yes." Silence. Then, a deep sigh. "I knew this day would come." Maria's mind raced. "You knew?" Elon's tone darkened. "Tom reached out to me before he died. He warned me about the stolen money, about the men behind it. But before I could help, he was gone." Maria's heart shattered. Tom had tried to protect her until the very end. Elon's voice softened. "Maria, listen to me. If you release this, they will come after you. But if you give it to me, I can make sure they fall." Maria clenched her fists. The people who killed her husband had to pay. She took a deep breath. I don't care about myself. I just want justice for Tom. Elon paused. Then, meet me in 2 hours. I'll handle the rest. Maria closed her eyes. It was time. But as she turned to leave, a car screeched to a stop outside. Her body went cold. They had found her. Maria grabbed Doris's hand. We have to go. Now. Before they could move, the front door burst open. 2 men in black suits stormed in. One grabbed Maria's arm. You shouldn't have watched that video. Maria struggled, but the man was strong. Too strong. Doris screamed, let her go. She threw a vase at one of them. It shattered, giving Maria a chance to break free. Jeff Bezos stepped forward, blocking the men. If you touch her, you're making the worst mistake of your life. The room fell silent. One of the men narrowed his eyes. You shouldn't be helping her, Bezos. You know what's at stake. Jeff straightened. His voice was firm. I know exactly what's at stake, and I'm not afraid anymore. A second later, the sound of sirens filled the air. Maria's heart leaped. The FBI stormed in. The men in suits paled. Jeff turned to Maria. I called them before I came. Tears welled in her eyes. Tom's killers were finally going down. As the agents arrested the men, one of them hissed, This isn't over. But Maria knew the truth. It was over. For the first time in 7 years, she felt free. 1 week later, Maria stood in a quiet cemetery. The sky was gray, the air cold, but she didn't shiver. She placed a single white rose on Tom's grave. Her voice broke. We did it. The people who killed him were behind bars. The stolen money was recovered. And Maria, she could finally breathe again. A tear rolled down her cheek. I miss you so much, Tom. Doris placed a gentle hand on Maria's shoulder. He would be so proud of you. Maria held back a sob. That night, when she returned home, she found a letter waiting for her. It had no return address, just her name. Maria's hand shook as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Tom always knew you were stronger than you believed. Now the world knows it too. He never stopped loving you, and neither will I. Jeff. Maria pressed the letter to her heart, tears falling freely. She had lost so much, but she had also found justice, strength, and hope. And as she stood there, she knew one thing. Tom was finally at peace. A message to my viewers. My dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, if it made you cry, if it made you feel something deep inside, please don't leave without letting me know. Hit that like button if you believe in justice. Drop a comment to tell me how this story made you feel. And if you want more stories that will make you laugh, cry, and stay on the edge of your seat, then subscribe to my channel right now. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth always wins in the end.